Every restaurant manager you talk to has that same weird gut feeling. If only we knew exactly what to prep, exactly how many staff we'd need this day, or when demand is going to spike. Well, data just doesn't tell you what happened yesterday anymore, right? When done right, forecasting and AI, that gives you a map for tomorrow. So ClearCOGS is one of those companies that is actually pushing the envelope here. They're giving full service, fast casual, and franchise operators tools to predict prep, labor, menu, and even food waste. So today I'm really super excited to dig into what predictive operations really means. What are the big wins here? And how restaurant tech folks like founders, operators, and even lowly marketers like myself can leverage this kind of information so that the numbers don't just look good, they actually drive profit. So it's my sincere pleasure to welcome Mr. Matt Wampler, CEO of ClearCOGS, to the show. Matt, welcome to the show, my friend.
Oh, thanks for having me. Looking forward to doing some demystification of those numbers.
That's right. I Here's the thing, man. They want to be smarter, Matt. They crave understanding what the heck is going on. Here you are skating on the thin edge of AI and forecasting, and like you're a miracle worker. So I want to understand. Tell me, ClearCogs, how did ClearCogs even come to be? Why did you bring this company into existence?
Yeah, well, people may want to get smarter, but for all the restaurant managers out there, they just want their life to get a little bit easier.
Amen.
Yeah, I mean, the way it all came about is I'm an ex-owner operator as a franchisee for the majority of my working career. And, frankly, you start out as a single unit operator and you're living in your store. I mean, I was in my early 20s, so 100 hours a week, like this was my baby. And I knew every inch, cranny, and, every sporting event and what the customers were going to do and what happens when it rained. Like, I had my finger on the pulse of the operation.
Right.
You open up more locations and, you don't scale, right? That learned intelligence from hours and hours of work, it doesn't scale. And so at least I'd find myself having these conversations with, my assistant managers, and it's, hey, Bill, you're throwing away too much bread at the end of the night.
No, so tell me a little bit more about this operation. So you had multiple operations. Where were they? What were they? Tell me a little bit about what were you making?
Yeah, I was a Jimmy John's franchisee, so I was slinging sandwiches. We had the,
Nice.
Maryland suburbs of DC.
Oh, beautiful. Fantastic. So then all about kind of a little bit about the lead in there. How much are you going to predict to prep? How many people are you going to need on any given day of the week? What kind of food waste are you in for if it's not done right?
Yeah, and,
So
the
what were some of those pain points
well, it's
that you
kind of
always
the
came across? Yeah.
dirty secret of franchising. Jimmy John's gave me the playbook of how to run a restaurant. And, I, as a young 22-year-old that didn't know a whole lot about restaurants, was able to follow that playbook.
Okay.
And it was what made me successful. I took my first restaurant from doing like $400,000 a year to 1.2 million over the next 18 months. And it certainly had nothing to do with me being the, smartest restaurant operator ever. But, like, again, as you slowly start to learn the playbook more and more, you realize there's some things that aren't in the playbook.
Right.
The feel of the restaurant was never mandated by corporate, right? You had to have a feel for what happens when it rains, what the local events are. You had to have your finger on the pulse of the operation. And like I was saying, as you opened up more locations, I don't scale evenly. And, I'd be having these conversations with assistant managers and would say things like, you're throwing too much bread out at the end of the night. They're like, great, I'll bake less bread. I'm like, well, only if it's going to be a slow night. And of course, the next night they'd run out of bread. And, it never got solved.
Right.
Right. And so later on in life, I got into this world of data science and programming, found out it's possible with technology. Like this technology exists and restaurants just aren't using it. I remember calling my co-founder Osa and saying like, "Hey, I think there's a really interesting opportunity here." And, honestly, Paul, he didn't believe that there was any way in
Right.
a $1 trillion industry, there's hundreds of, 100 plus billion dollars of waste every year purely because people don't know who's going to walk in the door tomorrow.
That's right. So, but it boils down kind of to forecasting, and
Yeah.
having a real solid grasp on the forecasting principles. And the reality is that there's up until almost very recently, forecasting has been sort of a slave to um, having data that you can believe and trust in. So, that,
Maybe I think it's really just been up to the people on the ground to make the best decision that they have, given their gut instinct and the information at hand.
hmm. But with the information at hand, typically you're talking about, even with the Jimmy John's, you're talking about a restaurant that has technology systems, that has back office systems, that has a little bit of horsepower under the technology hood for the average franchisee. Did you find in your experience that these systems were just not capable or less to be desired?
Paul, we used an Excel spreadsheet, took a 4-week moving average of sales, got rid of catering, and then just threw on 20%. And that gave us sales. That didn't tell me how much bread to bake, but it gave me kind of a ruler, a guideline. This is what I should expect for the shift. And, frankly, that's the status quo. And when you
Yeah,
talk to people that say they're using forecasting,
right.
truth is, when you look under the hood, a lot of times it's not much more than a 4-week moving average of sales.
That's what it boils down to. So that's the real world right there, as opposed to sometimes in the restaurant technology world, we all have this idea that particularly large enterprise brands, have these quite elaborate and forecasting systems and technology systems. But we do know at the end of the day, it's all about are they using it? And are they using it in a way that is consistent with running a good operation? And you're telling me that generally speaking, no, it's a spreadsheet. And uh,
Well,
for the but part and parcel, most people, a few,
look, I'd say 2 things. So, one, I'd say that franchisors, these large institutions that you're talking about, generally, they make their money off royalties, a cut of the top line.
yeah,
If it comes to forecasting marketing budgets, what's gonna be this quarter, anything to do with revenues,
right,
they're doing it, and they're doing a pretty darn good job of it. But when
yeah,
it comes to the granular, on the ground decisions, do I bake that extra cycle of bread? I'm a barbecue restaurant. Do I smoke that last brisket? You're relying on the pit master. You're relying on who ran the shift yesterday and what their most recent experience was.
right. So then talk to me a little bit about how ClearCOGS and this idea of forecasting and AI kind of come together and solve the challenges of ingredient forecasting, for example.
Yeah.
And how does it solve for spoilage and supplier lead times? What's under? How does that work?
Well, first off, I think the thing that's missing there is even if you have a forecasting system, it's not very likely that you're able to turn that into decision points for the staff on the ground. And if you leave it only 90% done and rely on the staff to do the last 10%, they're just not going to do it. They have chaotic lives and they're managing fire after fire. So, it's forecasting is incredibly complex and important, but
Sure.
just as important is translating into something that's usable for the on the ground manager.
So, so you're telling me then, or what that sounds like, is that the software might be working on a forecast, but then presenting something to the manager that's kind of more in their
Yeah, your daily cheat sheet.
vocabulary. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
these are the things you need to know, all laid out
Well,
for you.
tell me, well, so what does that look like? So it does a forecast in the background, and then your software spits out a cheat sheet?
Yeah, basically, that is exactly right. Every
Okay.
brand's cheat sheet is a little bit different. It's customized to their individual operation. What are the 20 questions that if you get right every day,
Yep.
add up to a healthy profit margin? It's not how much cilantro do I need to have chopped, it's how much brisket do I need to have? How many bagels do I need to bake? What do I need to have at shift change? How do we go really deep on those important questions so
Right.
that, you get them right and you make more money?
I love that. So you're not getting tied into the weeds. You're basically bringing you're elevating what needs to happen.
It's like, what do they always say? A swan, a swan on the lake. It just glides and it looks effortlessly.
Right.
What's happening on top of the water, that's what the managers get, right? It's
Right.
simple, it's distilled down for them. Underneath is incredibly complex. So all of that learned intelligence I had, spending hundreds of hours in the restaurant, knowing how rain affect things and what the local events are and what limited time offerings I've had and has the night shift been up or down? That we've turned into an AI program that basically sucks in all of your point of sale POS data,
Mhm.
right? And takes it on the ingredient level and looks at how much chicken am I using every 15 minutes? And how does the day of the week affect it? And how does weather affect it? And oh, we just launched a turkey limited time offering. How does that affect my chicken usage? So there's these really complex probabilistic time series forecasting models that are done on the individual ingredient level, but no one really knows that. Great AI, you shouldn't know any of that. You should just know that your manager gets a number that's going to be right. And at the end of the day, the operation's going to run smoother.
Absolutely. No question about it. So we talked a little bit about food costs, and ingredients and forecasting for the bigger things. Uh and putting this inside of a cheat sheet. So I want to explore this cheat sheet idea a little bit further because I'm very much intrigued by this. How do you categorize what are the categories on this cheat sheet that your forecasting is taken care of? Okay, so we talked about ingredient forecasting, or better yet, I don't. What do you call that? What is it? Ingredient forecasting or
Predictive prep.
prep? Prep.
We call it predictive prep. I don't think
Predictive
the
prep.
industry. How about this? There's not a name for it. Paul,
We
what's
have
the
a
name
name for
for it?
everything, Matt.
What's the name for it?
Well, this is your chance.
Yeah, we're going to go with predictive prep. But the fact that there's not a well-known industry name for it tells you where we're at with this today.
Well, congratulations. You now own predictive prep, and I would get that shit trademarked immediately. Predictive prep. Yes, of course it's predictive prep. So let's talk about predictive labor. So I've got to imagine labor's got to be on that sheet somewhere.
Yeah, so we just closed our seed funding round, and now we've got the handcuffs off. We can go do a bunch of these other things. So, you can imagine labor is already a current workflow. I'm working out of my labor management system, right? It's a great UI. It helps me to schedule. So we've started doing partnerships with a number of labor management companies that you're going to be rolling out over the next quarter, 2 quarters, where all of a sudden you're going to have predictive labor. Where do I allocate my labor budget? If it's going to rain and I want my out the door times to be under 5 minutes, how many drivers do I need to have and what's it going to cost me? Right? So you can start to make these cost benefit decisions, right, on
Right.
your labor.
I like that. So we've got prep. We're going to be able to forecast properly labor. Um, what about what other types of insights is a company like ClearCOGS providing the operator outside of prep labor? I mean, I would assume that part of that prep is there's of course waste, which if prep is done correctly, you're automatically reducing waste. So
Yeah.
what other things are we measuring and are we providing insights about?
Look, I mean, there are only 3 numbers that
Okay,
really matter in a restaurant. What are my revenues? What are my food costs? And what are my labor? Those are the 3. Now, there are a lot of decisions that are made underneath those 3 that
right.
we play in, but those are the 3 levers. How do I make sure I have enough product available that I'm maximizing every chance to increase revenue, reduce the times that I'm out of stock? So you get the not even just for that day, so the customer comes back because they got what they wanted, right?
Mhm.
How do I get the right food ordered in the door? How do I get the right food prepped so it's there to serve? How do I make sure it's fresh because I prepped the right amount and I'm not using yesterday's lettuce? How do I schedule my labor out so that, you know, I'm not making last minute changes and getting stuck paying, whatever they call them in California, the increased last minute fees for,
Right.
bringing in staff. You
Yeah.
know, that's those are the three pillars.
Yeah, absolutely, they are, and there's tremendous opportunity there, as there always seems to have been, to create a lot of different efficiencies.
Yeah, but the difference was everything prior to this was retrospective. I mean, when you really go back and look at most technologies,
Mhm.
they basically say, look at how elegantly we can display and show you everything going wrong in your restaurant,
Right.
right? It's a paradigm shift. When you move to, predictive, prescriptive analytics,
Mhm.
the measure is how the absence of those, right? How many days go as planned?
So this is like, this almost feels like it's been 417 days since the last, accident
Yeah.
on the job
Yes.
type of thing.
That's exactly right.
So you're basically stringing together successes. That's what we're looking for here, right?
More days going right. I mean, that's all we want in restaurants. When you get the day right, you make more money, your staff is less stressed
Right.
out. When things go wrong, they don't just go slightly wrong, they usually go really wrong. And it costs you more than just revenue.
So, but one of the beautiful things that you love about AI, is pattern recognition, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so when we talk about pattern recognition, and we can start talking a little bit about anomalies, things that are off kilter, things that have gone wrong that you can identify, you need to fix it. Is the swan pedaling under the water fixing these things automatically, or is it presenting, or rather, are you now simply presenting a prescription?
No. And make sure I'm getting your question right.
Yeah,
There's a
go.
lot of things that go wrong in restaurants every day. And if
Right.
you're using historic data to predict the future, are you not just going to predict more days going wrong because that's what's happened in the past?
That's a brilliant observation. I love that observation. If you're using the same historical data, then aren't you just on basically a track to repeat the same doomed choices that you made earlier?
Yeah.
So how do you offset that, Matt?
It's the really unsexy part of what we do that no one really
Yep.
wants to listen to, but it's a lot of data
That's
cleansing.
why
I
you
mean,
that's why I'm here.
yeah, I mean, every time you run out of a product, like we
Mhm.
have to go identify that in the data. We have algorithms and we use, reinforced learning through human feedback to, help triangulate when those occurred. And we have to backfill the data. There's a lot of things we have to do there. But, fundamentally, that gets us to a great starting place.
Yep.
You're moving from effectively Excel spreadsheets or a 4-week average or, whatever your back of house calls forecasting that's not very good, right? To a true custom probabilistic time series forecast. It's much better. Horse and buggy to the automobile, right? But then that automobile just gets better
Mhm.
every month as more days go right and the data gets cleaner.
Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of SaaS, right? You're always updating, you're always, improving. It is What you're doing is very similar to what Elon is doing with the Tesla, right? Over the air updates, making the product better. I mean, whether you like it or not, but it's neither here nor there. You're always making improvements.
Paul, that's the first time anybody's ever equated me to Elon. So I'm just going to take that and just,
Oh, you can run with it.
absorb that
You
for a
you
second.
love that? All right, I can tell. Yeah. So this is the thing. I want to understand. You, t- we talked about repeating the same mistakes over and over again with historical data. So what are you doing? What is the AI, the solution, and whether it's your solution or any other solution out there, what are you doing to improve that? And are you supplementing that data with more data that you perhaps maybe either licensed from somewhere else, or how do you make those improvements?
Yeah, for every one recommendation we make, you should have, 2 dozen plain bagels tomorrow. We look at about 100 million data points to make that one recommendation.
Okay,
And a chunk of those are your historic transactions. Chunk of those are, marketing, advertising, weather, all that kind of stuff. And it gets really complicated. The data scientists will probably get mad at me for dumbing this down, but I always equate it to this. If you gave me half a day and said, Matt, I want you to figure out, do we smoke that last brisket? Just spend a day,
hmm,
review the data. We don't do anything that would be that different than what I would do. I would go look and I would see what I use on Thursdays. I'd see if I'm trending up. I'd see what events are going on. I would see how weather, has affected it. Is it going to rain tomorrow? These
right,
are very like learned intelligence items,
right,
right? But the problem is you're gonna pay me for half a day to make that decision? Like, the ROI on the decision is probably like if it took more than 45 minutes, it wasn't worth the time. Where machine learning can do is take that same exact thought process
right.
and do it for every ingredient at every location simultaneously and re-underwrite those decisions and retrain every night.
See, there's the magic, right? When you're talking about that scalability too, because what you just did is multiplied yourself. You took an experienced operator's thought process and you essentially scaled that across an enterprise, right? You're doing the same, you're doing all of the smart things that a skilled operator would do, but now you're doing it for everyone.
And Paul, the magic moment, I mean, I've had this conversation dozens of times
Hmm.
where the COO or the VP of ops said, man, if every manager could just think like me or run it like me or make these decisions like
Right.
me, I mean, we would add millions of dollars to the bottom line every year. It's like, great. That's what we're here to do. How do we digitize you and your thought process so that, your manager, who's probably great with the customers, great at training the staff, great with people,
Mhm.
doesn't have to go figure out Excel and arithmetic and, looking through reports and analytics because the guy that loves that probably isn't great with people.
You're probably right. All right, but you know what? You bring up a really interesting point that is going to be kind of the perfect segue to, well, how do you do it? How do you put together, how do you put AI to use without the entire overhaul, right? If one of the big barriers to the industry is change, tech stack processes, staff buy-in, in your experience, Matt, how do restaurants adapt predictive tools like ClearCOGS?
All right, I'm gonna throw something really controversial out there. You actually build the software for the operator around their operations instead of, make them change their operations for your solution. So, what is your current workflow? Right? We have an open API. We can go transfer it right into that portal.
Okay,
Or, do you have a digital prep sheet? Great. Let's take that exact same format, no changes, right? And digitize it and automate it, right? So you just have a systematic report that looks exactly the same. And it doesn't take that much work.
right.
And I talked to
So
venture
it's kind of custom. You're talking about a custom solution here, but is it through configuration or is it through
yeah, it's
actual?
personalization, right?
Okay,
So it's sitting down for an hour therapy session and saying,
sure.
okay, brisket. You got to smoke those briskets every night for the day before, right? When
Mhm,
do you make the decision? Oh, 7 o'clock. When do you want the report? 6 o'clock. Great. We'll send the report at 6 o'clock.
right.
All right. Now, do you want to know raw brisket or do you want me to tell you how much smoked brisket to have at the end so that you can figure out based on trimmings and all that kind of stuff? You know, do you want to run out of brisket every day, once a week, once a month, once a quarter, right? Because, if you never want to run out, and you need to be prepared for every bus that comes in, you're going to waste a lot, right? And that may be okay with you. But, what are you optimizing for? If you just sit down for that hour therapy session and then configure it for their workflows, it's easier to follow the software than not, and all those headaches that you mentioned just, melt away.
Yeah, I like that. I think that, that feels very, very personalized.
It is.
So
And
because
and
here's the
Paul,
thing.
the only reason that that's even possible is because of AI. Because once we set that up and the AI knows what you're optimizing for and
Mhm.
how to report it, it can then go do the heavy lifting of going through every ingredient, every store, every day, and personalize the demand patterns based on their events and their weather and how rain in Seattle is very different than rain in, Arizona.
Now, but you bring up another interesting point, though, about this customization or rather personalization, because when you think about it by segment, and what I mean by that is like, okay, there are QSR restaurants, there's fast casual restaurants, there's full service with a bar. All of these different types of restaurants out there can clearly benefit from this. But is that customization is the complexity of that? Does that mean, okay, if I'm full service with the bar, is that a 10-hour therapy session? Or is it really kind of all the same thing and it's just the AI is just working longer or
No,
harder?
this is a great question. So we predominantly focused on fast casual QSR chains. You
Mhm.
need to have 15 or 20 units because for us to go do that personalization, you need to have enough units where the ROI makes sense for both parties, right? If you have a, let's call it a fine dining establishment with a seasonal menu that changes every week, look, we can't do that. You're not our customer,
Right.
right? We can give you revenue forecasting. We can tell you how many tables you're going to turn or how many checks you're going to do, tell you how many entrees you're going to sell. There are some helpful things that we can do. But, fundamentally, if you want to go that deep and do an optimized decision around ingredient, you tend to need to be more fast casual QSR.
Okay. Good. Thank you for that clarification.
I guess let's put it this way. If you were a Chili's, that has a bunch of different locations
Mhm.
with a pretty standardized menu, no problem. You can totally do that. It's really how frequently are you changing your menu?
Right, right. But the depth what about the depth of the menu? So for example, everybody uses the classic Cheesecake Factory with 100 plus menu items and built from scratch and etcetera. Is AI appropriate? Is AI and forecasting appropriate for something like that?
Yeah, so, just like we're doing with, the labor side of things and doing partnerships to work through that,
Yeah.
we're doing the same thing back of house. So we just started working with Cogswell, a number of others, where now all of a sudden, if you've got a back of house software that already has your inventory, it's already got your theoreticals and actuals, we can
Mhm.
take all of that information that's already pre-written out and turn it into ingredient level forecastings. You still need to go sit down and have the therapy session to know when do I need to know this? What am I optimizing for? I think it's funny is the biggest conversation we tend to have is, hey, do you want your franchisees to be able to say what they're optimizing for and give them control to change the levers of power? Or is this something that's going to stay with, corporate, the headquarters? And that's always an interesting dilemma.
Yeah. That is interesting. I'd be curious to see how that shakes out. But here's where the rubber hits the road, Mr. Wampler. I want to understand a little bit more about metrics and what success actually looks like. So, in in your mind, what are the actual real measurable metrics that restaurants should even be watching, beyond, percent waste or food cost? I mean, what are the how do you know that the forecasting investments are really paying off?
Well, let's start with the hard numbers. So I love theoreticals and
Hmm.
actuals, right? For my food costs. I've got a gap. I'm wasting this much each week. Let's look at us coming in and let's look at post. I mean, I can tell you, the best study we had, somebody really didn't trust it. And they were a, big organization. So they did a double controlled study, right? They did it into certain aspects of the food cost and not others at certain stores. Long and short of it was first location, first month had saved $7,000, right? Like it's not even
Yeah.
the results are quite large. Let's put it that way. It's
Right.
not debatable. But That's on the monetary side.
Mhm.
The real results we look for is the managers on the ground saying, "You can never take this away from me," right? Like, "I rely on this. This has changed my life," because that's really what matters. Again, we go back to that whole how elegantly am I reporting on, the problems versus how many days go right.
Right.
That matters to somebody on the ground that their life has gotten better. Yeah, and not to get on my soapbox, but like restaurants are reactive. When you're reactive and you're sitting there in a reactive stance, waiting to see who comes through the door, did I get it right or wrong? That's really stressful. When you make these decisions proactively
Mhm.
ahead of time and you followed the number and you've done your job, you're not gonna get in trouble if it goes the wrong way. Like, it really does change the operation.
Right. And it changes the operation. It just must provide a tremendous amount of peace, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
on behalf of the for the manager.
You know
Understand what's working.
we first got started, one of the biggest concerns we had was we turned this on and, they'd have all kinds of little complaints, this, that, and the other for the first week, and then we'd never hear from them again. And we were petrified, and this is when we first got started,
Yeah.
like, to call them because maybe they forgot about us, they're continuing to pay, are things going well? And you finally started picking up the phone and calling, and they're like, "Oh, no, this is great. This is what I do."
Yeah.
In the world of restaurants, this is something that performs that I no longer even need to think about, right? I don't think about ClearCOGS because things are going the way they're supposed to.
Well, that's the ultimate compliment, isn't it? When when you get a customer that that has that kind of peace of mind and confidence in your solution, that's contagious when that happens. But it kind of brings up the flip side of the success, or rather, adjacent to the success is okay. Well, how quickly can one expect to see some real impact when you're combining forecasting and AI together into a cheat sheet like delivery?
Well, welcome to the world of startups. We move quickly.
Damn straight, brother.
I mean, we have so most of it comes back to how long does it take for you to get on for your therapy session and provide feedback?
Right. Okay.
2 weeks, maybe? 4 weeks at the longest? We can have you spun up, ready to go, like fully implemented.
Real data coming back. Let's talk about it. Let's see what we need to do to tweak.
And you wanna add 100 more restaurants on tomorrow? No problem, because it's already specced out. So it literally just starts delivering. And because you took the time to work with somebody who's going to personalize it to you,
Yep.
there's not this onboarding and training. It's the same thing that they're used to, just being delivered in a new method or, in a new font.
Right. All right. So, well, let's examine that a little bit. I want to, maybe you can share a story where something went really well and they get it. That they're using the forecasting and they've discovered some amazing unexpected gains. But maybe you can share a story about what didn't go right, and maybe what didn't go right. Is it something that you guys did, something that they weren't thinking about, or they didn't latch on to? Uh, what maybe even provide a lesson there for the listeners, particularly the operators.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, things do go wrong,
Of
right?
course.
They go wrong for a number of different reasons. Most of the time, the reasons that things go wrong is operators don't take the time to say, "Hey, this doesn't make sense. You're sending me my how much brisket to smoke for today in the morning, and it was supposed to be the night before." And their relationship with most tech vendors is, I get the product and it's not personalized to me, so I never thought of reaching out. I just, never said anything.
Right.
Right? And so it's just that feedback, right? Like the more you communicate, we're a partner. We want to work with you, personalize it to you. So like I'd say most of the problems we've ever had come from that
Yeah, and
communication.
that is absolutely, and that is what you would expect almost with any solution. Um, you
Yeah.
need that feedback loop. You
Well,
need to have, a proper kickoff, and a proper check-in, and proper status updates, et cetera. These are opportunities to communicate.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that we learned that the industry is not necessarily used to that. And so we brought somebody on full time that literally their job is to check in with operators, to call once a week. How are things going? Is there anything you need changed, improved? Because if you're
Mm,
going to rely on them to take time out of their incredibly busy day to provide you feedback, they're not going to remember. I mean, they're going from fire to fire. So, it's on the tech company to, the onus is on us to go
that's
to
right.
them to see how we can improve it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we've seen time and time again that it's those tech companies that invest on the client service side that can have those meetings, can have those feedback sessions, that um, can highlight some insights for the operators that they might not have checked out on their own. That's what the relationship is all about. That's what keeps things going.
And then on the success side of things, my favorite story, and this may not be the biggest success we ever had, but
Okay.
it was early on. It was a small barbecue restaurant called Red, White, and Q out of New Jersey. By the way, fantastic
Red,
bar.
white, and Q. So pool hall too, or
No, no, no. It's like Q, like barbecue.
got you. Okay.
Yeah, QUE. Um,
No, I'm a
fantastic.
New Englander. We don't know what barbecue is.
Yeah, Dan runs it. And Dan's like, guys, there's no way I only need 7 racks of ribs. Like, Dan, we looked at the numbers. It's 7 racks. He's
Hmm.
like, all right, I'm gonna do it. And then he'd do like 9 and he'd come back, he'd be like, Dag damn it, like it was 7. Like it was actually 6.5. It would have been perfect. And the next day he's like, guys, there's no way it's 6 today. Like, just no way. Right. Like I was gonna do 12. And of course, it was like, came in right at 6. And like we did this whole thing with him. And it's just this, it's almost like a game, right? Like, and it's almost like retraining your like neural passageways to like accept, wow, I've just been off. My barometer has been like, calibrated too high for way too long.
See, that's fun. Um, when you get to prove operators not wrong, but rather when your system is right, that's got to feel good. And then when that happens more often than not,
Yeah.
that's even better. And that's how you gain traction in the
You
sport.
want real fun, go benchmark us against like your back of house software or, whatever like built-in forecasting you have. Like that's the game we enjoy playing the most.
Ooh, I'm gonna have crunch time on in a couple of weeks, so that maybe that'll be fun.
Yeah, they're gonna tell you it's an amazing I don't know if what they'll say. I don't even know if they acknowledge they have forecasting. I having been on the other side, let me tell you what, I'm ready to head competition any day of the week.
I love it. You better go do that. So, all right, before we wrap up, I just want to know, for listeners who are curious, what they should do tomorrow to start moving toward predictive operations, either as operators or, what should they start thinking about if they're thinking about really getting their forecasting straight, being able to predict how much food to make, perhaps how much food to order. What How do they need to start training themselves to think, to really to get on the tech bandwagon and start saving some money through better forecasting?
Let me pose the question slightly different. We
Okay.
all know that AI and technology is coming. We don't know what it's going to be, but I think if you sit down and talk with most operators and said,
Hmm.
like, in 20 years, do we have robots in the kitchen? Do we have like AI, running the operation? They'd say, yeah, some of that's going to happen in 20 years. Somewhere between then and now, right? There's this curve. And how do you make sure that you're on the train and at least aware of what's going on? And I don't think that going and rolling out voice AI across your organization, like it's a big change, right? That affects a lot of things. Do I want to bring kiosk in? Big change. There are some things that you can do like revenue forecasting. Give me a sales forecast. If you're a restaurant on toast today, we literally have a freemium option that you can just go enable ClearCOGS and we will start giving you
So
free.
you're in the Toast
Oh,
marketplace.
yeah.
Okay.
We're integrated. If you walk into a restaurant, there's a 70% chance we're integrated with their POS. Um, but like, go get the free sales forecasting. Why
Right.
not? Like, it's
Right.
you may not even use it, but it's a good barometer to get started, right? And as you grow, maybe you want to start doing predictive prep. Maybe you want to just start with predictive ordering. Maybe you want to start with like labor
So
budgeting.
you can't like you use that beautifully elegant swan gliding across the water. You can actually glide into this. It's not like all or nothing. We've got to hit the ground running with the whole kit and caboodle. You
No,
can
no.
you can go at your speed.
Yeah. And Paul, you know what I like best in a client? One that knows what their problem is and what outcome they're driving for.
Okay.
Barbecue's the easiest. I'm sorry, I keep going to barbecue. I must need to get
Dude,
barbecue in
I'm
there.
getting hungry. I'll tell you
Like,
what.
but like if I know my biggest problem is I need to stop wasting brisket, right? And I need to be told how much brisket at this time, right? And this would be the result if you got it right. Like once you get to that point, then you're a great fit for a ClearCOGS, right? If you're an independent restaurant out there and you're just figuring out, go start to expose yourself, get a feel for it.
Yeah. Good. I like that. I like the fact that you're already integrated with Toast. You're in the Toast marketplace. People can find you easily enough through the Toast app. Where can they find you, Matt? If they have questions that they'd like to ask you directly, where can we find you?
Oh, first off, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on all your social platforms. LinkedIn's probably the best. Get on the website. We love talking with restaurant operators. Like whether you buy or not,
Mm.
even if it's just to get a sense of what we do so that when the timing's right, you're educated on it. You can literally book a call with us right there. Like we'd love to have a conversation.
Beautiful. Fantastic.
And if you're on Toast, get on the Toast marketplace. Cost you nothing. Enable it. Get your free sales forecasting. We've got a whole litany of new reports that are coming out that are again free of charge. We're hoping to set you up for success so that your brand can grow and we can be a part of that growth story.
Fantastic. I will make sure that I put some links in the description of the podcast. Mr. Matt Wampler, CEO of ClearCogs. Dude, thanks, man. This is fun. You've demystified AI and forecasting because you want to know what? I think what you actually did was you set it up for actual real restaurants that have real that it just feels a lot more real world.
It's funny, when you have people that come from the real world building the companies, that tends to be what you get, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's good. I think that's a good design philosophy, and that's a really good philosophy that this industry needs more of. Let's get more solutions, built by operators for operators. That's a great, wonderful
Well,
thing.
Paul, I really appreciate you having me on. I appreciate everything you do for the industry.
Oh, thanks, brother. Hey, everybody. This wraps up episode 50 something with Mr. Matt Wampler from ClearCogs. Listen, give me a like, a thumbs up, subscribe. And next week, we'll have another fantastic guest that will help us demystify another topic.
And if you're looking to get away from Paul and you want another podcast,
Yes,
listen to me at the Restaurant AI podcast
that's
where we
right.
go into the weeds.
Oh, my God. My bad. Restaurant AI podcast, Go into the Weeds with Wampler.
I'm just
About
trying to follow on your coattails. I mean, I know you've got the audience. You are Mr. Restaurant Podcast. I'm just trying to keep up here.
No, man. You know what? Those are very kind words for you to say. But the reality is that this is a massive industry, and there are never-ending opportunities to get smarter, to learn more, uh, and basically spread the good word. Because the more we can educate, the more that we can inform our industry. Basically, the better off that we're going to be. The better off restaurants will be, and the better off restaurateurs will be.
Preach it, my friend.
All right, thanks, Wampler. Be good, my man.
Thanks, Paul.